Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli, the computer guy, here for the Daily Blob, where you say, I don't think your plan is working how you think your plan is. I don't think they're addicted to our AI stack. It kind of seems like they're building their own AI stack. I don't think your plans are working. Anyways, another day, another conversation, another monologue about how China might end up whooping our ass in the AI world, mainly because of our own dumbass decisions. So I've been talking about AI a lot lately, not for ChatGPT or any of that horse crap, but basically the concept of architecture and the concept of systems and the concept how does all of these different things kind of tie in together to be able to build a solution that is actually useful. I just did a piece talking about how Huawei is coming out with these new storage units. Supposedly the fastest storage and the largest storage in the world, but basically that's optimized for artificial intelligence workloads, right? The idea being, right, you have storage should be optimized for the workload that you're going to be using it for. So if you're going to be using storage for, let's say, a surveillance camera, you probably design that storage in a specific way. If you're going to be using storage for a video game console, you might design that storage in a certain way. And if you're going to be designing storage for artificial intelligence applications, you would actually design the storage in a different way, right? With caching mechanisms and all that kind of stuff. It's there's different requirements based off of what you're actually going to be using that storage for. So what I think is interesting here is with Huawei. Huawei is looking at using AI to basically be able to use multiple different types of storage and memory and figure out what is most appropriate for whatever task the AI system is currently doing. So I don't know, software designed, software SDN, software designed, storage, defined. It's been a long day. Kind of like how we have software-defined networking, software-defined storage. Basically, depending upon what the current process, the AI application is actually using, what storage media is actually going to be used. I think this is kind of an interesting thing to consider. Huawei unveils its Unified Cache Manager, a breakthrough AI software solution that optimizes high bandwidth memory, DRAM, and SSD usage. In an innovative leap set to improve China's position in the semiconductor market, Huawei introduces a software solution in high bandwidth memory technology. During the 2025 Financial AI Reasoning Application Landing and Development Forum in Shanghai, Huawei unveiled Unified Cache Manager, a software advancement poised to drastically enhance AI inference capabilities by expertly managing memory resources. This development is part of the company's effort to reduce reliance on high-end foreign memory chips. So basically, like when you normally design systems, like you don't want to overcomplicate your systems, right? You don't want to make your brain hurt too much. So if you can get your hands on top of the line hardware, you're just going to use top of the line hardware, right? It's always funny with the kids. It's always funny with the kids out there, right? They hear about a server costing $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever else, and they go, well, I could have built a server that was just as good for $500. That proves how stupid you are. And you're like, yeah, well, would you have a maintenance contract? Would I be able to purchase a maintenance contract for that server from you? Has that configuration that you're going to be selling me, has that been tested to high hell and back to verify that everything works properly under load? Are you going to make sure all of the hardware and everything is up to the specific specs that we want, right? If you think that the average computer technician is going to cost the company at least $100 an hour, right? The difference between spending $500 on a server and $10,000 on a server really actually isn't that much, right? I've done many interviews, the fireside chats. One of the things I bring up in the fireside chats with the CEOs or executives that I talk to is the cost of a MacBook Pro, how the noobs out there think $3,000 is expensive for computers, and how the executives really don't give two shits. They don't care if the computer costs $500 or $3,000. If you look at how much a programmer costs per year, they're just gonna spend, $3,000 on the MacBook. What becomes interesting though, again, this is one of the things you gotta think about with architecture, right? As a real technology professional, is what if you cannot get your hands on the highest level of equipment, right? What do I want to do? I want to buy the highest level of equipment basically to minimize the chance that there are problems. The more configurations there are, the more complications there are, the more chance something is to go weird. But then you may be the IT professional at a company that doesn't have that money. They don't have enough money to spend $10,000 on a server. So you gotta start figuring how much money can they spend on a server? And then you gotta start figuring out, okay, what can we build here that will actually work? What's interesting with what's going on with China right now is basically they're dealing with that problem basically at a nation state scale for their AI infrastructure, right? What do they want to do? What do they want to do? They want to go out and they want to buy the highest level equipment they can on the open market. The issue is my country is being dicks. We are. Anyways, so we're not allowing them to buy a lot of the high-end equipment, or if they can buy it, not nearly as much of the high-end equipment as they want to be able to buy. So then the problem is they come to is like, well, we have a limited amount of this high-end memory storage, but we have all this other lower quality memory and storage, So how can we create a system to optimize based on the hardware that we actually have? And so that's where they're coming up with this software solution, essentially for software-defined storage. Depending upon the task, depending on the requirement, the information will be sent to different quality levels of storage to try to optimize for what they actually have. AI efficiency through advanced memory management. The UCM software functions by allocating data according to the latency requirements of various memory types, such as high bandwidth memory, standard dynamic random access memory, DRAM, and solid state drives. The hierarchical strategy reallocates some of the more memory intensive tasks away from traditional HBM consumption, thus improving the entire system's efficiency. Zhao Yufeng, the vice president and head of Huawei's data storage product line, notes that UCM has successfully reduced AI inference latency by up to 90% and increased system throughput by up to 22 times. Now, here's the deal. He's still a technology professional, so he's still probably shining the turd. Is it actually 22 times faster? Probably not. What is it 22 times faster than? That's a hell of a question. But if you just kind of take it, and you understand a turd is being polished right now, it is kind of curious to be thinking about how redesigning the software layer for AI with how it handles storage and memory, how that can massively increase the performance of a system, and kind of think about how that might be used going in the future. The domestic chip production capabilities in China are under strain due to U.S. imposed sanctions limiting access to advanced HBM chips, which are vital for AI workloads. These sanctions specifically bar exports of advanced HBM versions like HBM2E, 3, 3E, and 4 to Chinese firms, affecting third-party manufacturers depending on U.S. technology. This regulatory framework poses challenges for China in securing supplies from leading global vendors such as SK Hynix, Samsung, and Micron. The UCM is not just a theoretical innovation, but has been tested in real-world scenarios, including customer voice analysis, marketing planning, and office assistant applications with China UnionPay, a major Chinese financial services entity. Huawei plans to open source the UCM platform in September 2025, which is expected to foster widespread adoption among developers and industry partners, promoting a collaborative ecosystem that goes beyond Huawei's proprietary influence. And that's the other thing that's interesting with this, with the whole war between the United States and China, with basically how the United States seems to be clamping down on our artificial intelligence technology. Like, we don't want China to get access to it. Oh, and we heard somebody in Argentina bought our hardware and then resold it to China. So now we're going to clamp down on Argentina, and we're going to clamp down on the Middle East, right? There's more and more. In the United States, there's more and more of this idea of we need to clamp down on this thing that we own, right? Which is going to become more of a pain in the ass for anybody trying to use our AI systems, right? If you go out there, if you're able to buy 1,000 units of NVIDIA GPUs, to start your deployment, and then you run through those 1,000, and then you go to put in your next order, and now all of a sudden you're getting put through the ringer for export restrictions and all that kind of stuff, right? That's going to put a bad taste in your mouth on whether you're going to want to use any American hardware going forward, right? If you are a CTO, if you are a CIO in Brazil, not in China, not in Cambodia, not in Russia or whatever, but you're in Brazil, right? Do you have the risk tolerance to deploy American AI into your architecture, into your infrastructure, when you know at any time the rules of the game may change? At the exact same time, you have China out there basically saying, we'll sell to anybody. We'll sell to anybody. We'll work with anybody. You want to buy 1,000 units, 2,000 units, 200,000 units? We'll sell you as many units as we can produce. And think about it. If you're that CIO, that CTO, and you're in Brazil, who are you going to feel more comfortable with in the future? And as we see, again, with the partnerships and like open sourcing, the whole idea of legacy, right? So with NVIDIA, right, they have their software architecture and all that kind of stuff. CUDA, right, that's one of the things that locks a lot of people in to using NVIDIA, right? CUDA is now legacy, ergo they've got to use whatever CUDA will run on, right? The interesting thing is, as more and more companies around the world basically find that they can't get access to American products, they then start using the Chinese products. The Chinese products literally have their own tech stack that doesn't necessarily play nicely with NVIDIA's tech stack, and this is how everything kind of goes to hell. This is how everything kind of sort of goes to hell for the American AI tech industry. So I think this is interesting, right? So Huawei is putting out new hard drives to improve AI performance. They're trying to rejigger basically how the storage and memory is used in these AI applications, and it'll be curious to see where this goes in the future. And again, you think about things like price for performance, right? So like with NVIDIA, right? If you buy an NVIDIA GPU, one of the Blackwell GPUs, it costs you $40,000. And if you buy a full server, it costs something like $200,000. Like a full server from NVIDIA is like $200,000, which again, for many Western companies, they got to figure it out. They got to figure out the financing or whatever else, but they can probably spend that kind of money. One of the things I think about is when I first saw Huawei, I think it was back in 2012 at Interop, New York. And one of the curious things is they were talking about how all of their devices were sealed. So back in 2012, right, if you were in the Western world, right, when I was looking to deploy networking equipment, the idea was wherever I'm going to deploy the networking equipment is going to be clean. It's going to be clean and relatively dust-free. And hopefully I'll be putting it into a server room that has its own HVAC system. Even if it doesn't have its own HVAC system, the server room should be cool enough wherever the stuff is going in, right? So if you look at Cisco equipment, they're basically tiny little vacuum cleaners, right? In order to cool themselves, they've got fans in there, so they're sucking air in and blowing it out to cool the device, right? That's basically how it works in the Western world. The thing is, if you go to India, you go to Cambodia, you go to Thailand, you go to a lot of other places, right? You want to deploy networking equipment. The HVAC system may or may not exist, and how clean the environment is probably highly questionable. It was fascinating. I was in like one of the areas in India, and the dirt there, I don't know what to say about the dirt. Like I remember I was in this hotel. And I woke up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the light was, the sun was starting to come up, and it was just, the view of the mountains was just fucking spectacular. Just like one of the most beautiful views I'd honestly seen in my life. Right? You're just sitting there, you got your little tiny cup of chai. You're sitting in this Indian hotel looking at the most beautiful mountains you've ever seen in your life. So I go in, I get cleaned up, get ready for the day. I come out of my room at about 6:30, right? The trucks have started driving, the cars have started driving, traffic's going. Can't see shit. Can't see shit. You look out, motherfucker, you can see like, I don't know, maybe probably 1,000 feet. That might be an exaggeration. You can see, but you're not seeing the mountains. You're like, aren't there mountains over there? I think I just saw mountains over there, right? Because they start driving and it kicks up this dust, dirt shit that just gets in the air, right? So anyways, think about this, right? You're an IT person in an environment where you got that kind of stuff, right? As soon as rush hour starts, all this dust and grit is going to get kicked up into the air. It's most likely going to be coming into your building, your environment. You have a little vacuum cleaner sucking that crap up. Even if you can afford Cisco equipment, even if you're in India and you got the money to afford Cisco equipment, is Cisco equipment the best solution for what you're looking for? And that was the interesting thing back then with Huawei. Huawei was selling sealed units, sealed networking units for business environments. This wasn't for light industrial. This wasn't, hardened equipment, theoretically. It was just like, hey, right? If you're going to be putting a switch and a router and all that kind of stuff into an office in India, maybe you don't want the damn thing to be a little vacuum cleaner. Right? So it had better price point. It was cheaper than Cisco. It was actually designed. It was physically designed for the environment that it was going into. And that's one of the reasons that Huawei has been able to take off in the rest of the world, because Cisco was going after, right, the big customers, right, the valuable customers, with Huawei was going after everybody else. And now Huawei is Huawei and Cisco is Cisco. So anyways, what I think was interesting here when you start thinking about like artificial intelligence, you start thinking about this software and how they're designing things, right? So if they start designing their AI solutions so that you only need the amount of expensive high bandwidth memory that you actually need, right? So the expensive stuff, right? You have a pool, you have a cat, whatever, pool of very expensive. You have a pool of moderately expensive, and then you have a pool of dirt fucking cheap. Right here in the US, we're not gonna do that shit. We're just gonna load that server up with all the expensive, memory we can get, right? We need 256 gigs of memory. It's gonna be the most expensive memory. Just shove that thing into that $200,000 server. Once you've spent $200,000 on a server, what the fuck does another 50 grand matter on memory, right? On RAM. But here's the thing. If you're in India, if you're in Cambodia, if you're in other places, right? If you can shave off $1,000 here, $500 there, right? If you can come in with something that has a lower price point, maybe the performance isn't quite as good, but you can significantly decrease that price point and give good performance. That's really a foot in the door to a lot of these environments. And so that's one of the things I'll be curious about with how things go with Huawei and such going forward. It's one of the problems that I really do see in the United States. We talk about that. The problem with tech bros, the problem with people like me, is we solve the problems that we see. We solve the problems that we see. And so if you're the average middle-class kid in the United States that then goes to a pretty good college, does well at the college, and then goes out into a tech company, what problems do you see? The problem that you see is hot or not. How do I determine if this girl is actually sexy or not? Right? That's a problem white boys understand. Right, but that's the thing. Like, you solve the problem. Like, okay, so we have this data center. How are we going to improve this data center that has HVAC? That's data center that has air purifiers and the rest of it. How do we improve stuff in this data center? But if you have most of the world, if you have 80% of the world, where that is not where their tech is being deployed, so many people in the U.S. they don't even see it. They don't even realize that's a problem to solve. And so it becomes interesting with Huawei. What happens when Huawei solves the technological problems of the 80% of the rest of the world, while our companies keep solving the problems that only we see? I don't know. In another 10 years, right? Because before Huawei was second fiddle or whatever, and Cisco was the big, networking company. And now, as I do believe Cisco is pretty far behind Huawei. Huawei is like the largest networking manufacturer in the world. And I do wonder if this is kind of like those initial shots for Huawei to take over the AI race too. So anyways, what do you think about this? What do you think about using software to optimize how memory and storage is used for AI solutions? What do you think about Huawei focusing on the problems of the 80% of the world that most Americans don't even want to think about, much less try to figure out what their problems might be? I don't know. Put your thoughts down below. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs down. Call me amazing. Call me a moron. Just do it down in the comments section. Because in the modern world, all that matters is that interaction. And with that, see y'all later.